Welcome back to Conversations on Deck, and today is Two for Tuesday, folks. We're looking at this 1969 Topps Rookie Stars featuring a couple of Phillies, Larry Colton and Don Money. These are just such fun cards to look at and see, hey, how did these guys turn out? Well, we know how both of them turned out because we did a little research here. But, fun back of the card. They give you their minor league stats. And when you look at these stats, these guys are actually doing pretty good in the minor leagues. The tough thing to do is to make it in the major leagues. So let's look at Larry Colton. Born June 8th, 1942 in Los Angeles, California. He actually played one game at the major league level, 2 innings actually, and then he got hurt, dislocated his shoulder. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then went back down to the minors and spent the rest of his career in the minors. He played for a particular team in 1975 called the Portland Mavericks, and were part of an independent minor league team, and they were actually owned by a famous guy, Kurt Russell's dad, Bing Russell. So that kind of brought them some fame. They were kind of interesting collection of ball players, and there's actually a documentary on Netflix about the Portland Mavericks. I'd suggest you check it out. Well, in 1969, let's look at Larry Colton. He's 27 years old. He's in the Pacific Coast League, playing for the Eugene Emeralds AAA team, and he actually did pretty well. He had a 1.5 WAR. He was 11-9, 4.18 ERA. Pitched in 26 games, a total of 155 innings, 8 complete games, 1 shutout. So I'd say those aren't too bad of stats there. 72 earned runs, 54 walks, 79 Ks, 0 hit by pitches. Now, one of the other things about Larry that I found out was after his playing days, he became a writer, which is really cool. And I'll be super honest. I haven't read any of his books. I looked up, books by Larry Colton. Here's what I found out. And these are kind of in chronological order. His first book was Idle Times, and that was a book about the 1977 Portland Trailblazers championship season. Sounds interesting. Then his next book is called Goat Brothers, and I thought, did he write a book about Tom Brady? And does Tom Brady have a brother? I think he's got a sister, but no, it's about his fraternity brothers and some stories, whatever. I'm not sure. Never was a frat boy. Counting Coup, and this was about a high school girls basketball team. That sounded kind of interesting. No Ordinary Joes. Now, this is very interesting to me because it has to do with World War II and a crew of guys that were in a submarine called the USS Grenadier that sunk during World War II. My dad was a World War II veteran, so that kind of stuff to me is pretty interesting. So I could see myself picking up that book, No Ordinary Joes. Plus, my dad's first name was Joe, so that's kind of cool. And then Southern League. This is another one that sounds really interesting, and it's a story behind the Birmingham Barons integrating in 1964 in Alabama, being the first baseball team to do that. So I'd say out of those books, I'm going for Southern League or No Ordinary Joes. So that's Larry Colton. Now, I had mentioned that he had gotten injured, and here's a direct quote from Larry about the night where he was outside of a bar with a friend. His friend got in a scuffle with somebody, and then somebody kind of, sucker punched him, and then he landed, dislocated his shoulder, and that was about it. So that was on June 5th, 1968. Here's what he said about that event. Quote, I remember that night because it was the night Bobby Kennedy was shot. I came out of the bar, and there was a lot of confusion and anger in the streets. And just before I got hit, I remember thinking, is the world going insane? Hey, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It just happened. End quote. You know what? I think that's amazing, that we have these different points of light, or like bookmarks, or I don't even know what you'd want to say is, things on the map in our history when big things happen. I think the biggest world event I remember was 1979, when the Ayatollah Khomeini took over Iran. And then I remember the 1980 Olympics, in Lake Placid. And then you kind of go on from there of different things. The space shuttle, when that crashed. And it's really kind of interesting in history. I remember talking to my mom years ago and asking her, what was it like when she was a kid and she heard on the radio that Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese on December 7th, 1941. And I remember her saying, quite clearly, she goes, we just cried. We thought it was the end of the world. And then I remember asking her, where was she when JFK was shot? And she said she was out hanging laundry, and one of my brothers, they sent all the kids home, and one of my brothers came home from school, and she scolded him, saying, why aren't you in school? And then it was, well, the president was shot. So it's kind of wild, how history is and how we remember different things. So Larry Colton remembered, his injury with the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. And I think sometimes when big world events happen, like let's say September 11th, 2001, you do wonder, is the world going insane? Hey, that's what people were thinking when the Red Sox were down 3-0 to the Yankees in 2004. And then what happens? It goes insane. And the Red Sox sweep the Yankees. Sorry, Yankee fans. And go on to sweep the Cardinals. Sorry, Cardinals fans. And then the world champions in 2004. My dad was super excited about that. He told my mom, now I can die. Okay, I digress. Let's go to Don Money. Born June 7th, 1947, Washington, D.C. Started out with the Phils, but most of his career, most of us card collectors are going to remember him as being a Milwaukee Brewer guy. Don Money, in 1969, he kind of was money. He was 22 years old. He had a 2.2 WAR. He played in 127 games. He had 103 hits, 22 doubles, 42 RBIs, 43 walks, 83 Ks, 229 batting average, 1 hit by pitch. So, it wasn't too bad. Here's a quote from Don Money that I thought was really kind of interesting. Quote, I took the civil service test and passed. I could have had a job in the government. My mom asked me what I was going to do. I told her to play baseball and see where it goes. Wow. Well, guess where? It went 16 years. He had a 36.5 WAR. He played in 1,720 games. He had 1,623 hits, 729 ribbies, 261 batting average lifetime, and 4-time All-Star. So, taking that civil service exam and passing it, you know what? He probably could have made a great career in the government. And, I have some friends that work for the federal government, and they also work for the state government. I think that's super awesome. We need good people in government jobs, and we need people in baseball world like Don Money. Yeah, he took a risk. Where's it going to go? Well, obviously, he did pretty well for himself. Here's another Don Money wisdom tidbit here. Quote, the biggest thing I look back on is I just went out there and played the game. I just helped the team to do whatever to win. End quote. That's a humble guy. That's the guy you want to manage. That's the kind of guy you want on the left side of you or the right side of you that's going to be willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Just look at the Red Sox. What'd they do? They won their 14th game last night. 14 in a row. Hope I don't jinx it. But that's every guy sacrificing there. All right. We're going to wrap this up with author Bill Baloo, and this is what he said about Don Money. Quote, there was a player whose glove work was so consistently spectacular that some unknowing observer might have thought Don Money's first name was the same as the Oriole legend. End quote. He's talking about Brooks Robinson. Could you imagine that being mistaken for Brooks Robinson, being in the same category defensively as Brooks Robinson? That's quite the compliment. That was Don Money. Okay, 2 for Tuesday. Hopefully the video wasn't too long. Have a great day, folks.